They say your wedding day is supposed to be the happiest day of your life. Nobody warns you that sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who'll try to destroy it. My name is Irene Matthews, and I'm about to tell you how my own sister almost ruined what should have been my perfect day, and how one photographer's quick thinking exposed a truth that changed everything forever. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my downtown Chicago apartment, casting golden rays across the wedding dress hanging in my closet. 3 months. That's all the time I had left before I'd walk down the aisle and marry David Chen, the love of my life. At 24, I never imagined I'd be planning a wedding this elaborate, but David's family had insisted on something grand for their only son. I ran my fingers along the delicate lace of my grandmother's vintage gown, which I'd had carefully restored and tailored to fit my petite frame. The ivory silk seemed to glow in the morning light, and the hand-sewn pearls caught every ray of sunshine. This dress represented everything I dreamed of since I was a little girl playing dress-up in my mother's closet. "Irene, you better not be obsessing over that dress again," came a familiar voice from my kitchen. My sister, Victoria, breezed into my bedroom carrying 2 steaming cups of coffee, her perfectly styled blonde hair already camera-ready, even though it was barely 8 in the morning. At 28, Victoria had always been the stunning one in the family, the one who effortlessly commanded attention wherever she went. "I'm not obsessing," I protested, accepting the coffee gratefully. "I'm just appreciating it." Victoria rolled her eyes, settling onto my unmade bed with the casual confidence she carried everywhere. "You know, when I get married, I'm definitely going with something more modern. Vintage is so—" She paused, searching for the right word. "Limiting." I bit back the urge to remind her that she'd been dating her current boyfriend Marcus for only 6 months, while David and I had been together for 4 years. Victoria had a pattern of intense relationships that burned bright and fast, leaving behind a trail of expensive gifts and broken hearts. She was currently between jobs again, having quit her marketing position at a boutique firm 3 weeks ago because, in her words, the creative director just didn't understand my vision. "The venue coordinator wants to do a final walkthrough next Tuesday. Would you like to come? As my maid of honor, you should probably see the space before the rehearsal dinner." Victoria's face lit up with genuine enthusiasm. "Absolutely! I have so many ideas for how we can elevate the whole aesthetic. The Roosevelt Hotel is gorgeous, but it could use some modern touches to really make it pop for the photos." This was classic Victoria, always looking for ways to improve things that were already perfect. The Roosevelt Hotel had been David's grandmother's suggestion, a historic venue in the heart of the city with stunning ballrooms and impeccable service. David and I had fallen in love with its old-world elegance the moment we walked through the doors. My phone buzzed with a text from David. "Good morning, beautiful. Can't wait to see you at lunch. Mom wants to discuss the seating chart again." I groaned audibly. David's mother, Linda Chen, was a force of nature who had very specific opinions about everything, from the flower arrangements to the appetizer selection. She meant well, but her idea of helpful suggestions often felt more like detailed instructions that left little room for David and I to make our own choices. "Let me guess," Victoria said, reading my expression. "The future mother-in-law?" "She wants to rearrange the seating chart again. Apparently, Uncle Robert can't sit within 3 tables of Cousin Janet because of some family drama from 1987 that nobody will explain to me." Victoria laughed, a sound that always reminded me of wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "This is exactly why I'm never having a big wedding. Too much family politics and not enough focus on what really matters, looking absolutely stunning and being the center of attention." Something in her tone made me look at her more carefully. Victoria was examining her manicured nails with studied casualness, but I caught a flicker of something in her green eyes. Envy? Resentment? It was gone so quickly I almost thought I'd imagined it. "You'll have a beautiful wedding when the time comes," I said gently. "Marcus seems really smitten with you." "Marcus is adequate," Victoria replied with a dismissive wave. "But let's not talk about my love life. This is supposed to be all about you and your big day. Speaking of which, have you finalized the photographer situation?" I nodded enthusiastically. David found this amazing photographer, Jake Morrison. He's done weddings for some really high-profile couples, and his portfolio is incredible. He has this way of capturing not just the post shots, but all the candid moments that tell the real story. Victoria mused, pulling out her phone. "Jake Morrison. Let me look him up." While she scrolled through what I assumed was his Instagram, I moved to my dresser and began sorting through the jewelry I had inherited from my grandmother. Her pearl necklace would be perfect with the dress, and the matching earrings would complete the vintage look I was going for. "Oh, wow," Victoria said suddenly, her voice taking on a different quality. "Irene, this photographer is really something." I glanced over to see her staring at her phone screen with an expression I couldn't quite read. "What do you mean?" She turned the phone toward me, showing a professional headshot of a man with dark hair, striking blue eyes, and a confident smile. "I mean, he's gorgeous and talented. Look at these wedding photos. He really knows how to capture beauty."
Something about the way she said beauty with such emphasis made me uncomfortable, though I couldn't pinpoint exactly why. Victoria had always been flirtatious by nature, charming everyone from waiters to bank tellers with her radiant smile and playful banter. It was just who she was. "He's very professional," I said carefully. "David and I met with him last month, and he was completely focused on understanding our vision for the day. He asked really thoughtful questions about our relationship and what moments were most important to us." "I'm sure he did," Victoria murmured, still scrolling through his work. "These photos are incredible. He really knows how to make women look luminous." The word choice struck me as odd, but before I could respond, my phone rang. David's contact photo filled the screen, a candid shot I'd taken of him laughing at something ridiculous on TV, his eyes crinkled with genuine joy. "Hey, babe," I answered, stepping away from Victoria toward the window. "Hey yourself. Listen, I have some good news and some potentially complicated news. Which do you want first?" I could hear the smile in his voice, which immediately put me at ease. David had a way of making even the most stressful situations feel manageable. "Give me the good news first." "The good news is that my cousin Amy can definitely make it from Seattle. She just confirmed her flight yesterday." "That's wonderful. I was so hoping she'd be able to come." Amy was David's favorite cousin, a marine biologist with infectious enthusiasm and the kind of warm, genuine personality that made everyone feel welcome. "And the potentially complicatedness?" David sighed. "My dad just told me that Uncle Frank is bringing a +1 nobody knew about. Apparently, he's been secretly dating someone for the past 6 months and decided our wedding would be the perfect time to introduce her to the family." I closed my eyes, mentally recalculating the seating arrangements we'd spent weeks perfecting. "How does your mom feel about this?" "She's managing. You know how she gets when plans change unexpectedly, but she'll adapt. She always does." This was one of the things I loved most about David, his ability to remain calm and optimistic even when dealing with family chaos. He'd inherited his father's steady temperament and his mother's determination, creating a perfect balance that made him an ideal partner for someone like me who tended to overthink everything. "We'll figure it out," I assured him. "There's always room for one more person who wants to celebrate with us." "This is exactly why I love you," David said warmly. "Most people would be stressed about the last-minute changes, but you just roll with it." Behind me, I could hear Victoria still clicking through her phone, occasionally making small, appreciative sounds at whatever she was looking at. I assumed she was still browsing Jake Morrison's photography portfolio, though her intense focus seemed excessive for someone who is just curious about my wedding photographer. "I should let you go," David continued. "Mom wants to meet for lunch in an hour to discuss the Uncle Frank situation and go over the final timeline with the wedding planner. Can you meet us at that Italian place on Michigan Avenue?" "Of course, I'll see you there." After hanging up, I turned back to Victoria, who was now holding her phone at arm's length, apparently taking a selfie. She snapped several photos from different angles, her expression serious and focused in that way people get when they're trying to capture the perfect shot. "What are you doing?" "Oh, just updating my Instagram story. I want to document the whole wedding planning process from the maid of honor perspective. It'll be great content." Victoria worked as a social media influencer when she wasn't between jobs, with about 15,000 followers who seemed fascinated by her lifestyle content. She had a gift for making even mundane activities look glamorous and aspirational. "I should get ready to meet David and his mom," I said, glancing at the clock. "Do you want to come? Linda always asks about you." "Can't today. I have a consultation with a new client at 11, but tell her I said hello. And Irene, try not to let her steamroll you on the seating chart. This is your wedding, not hers." After Victoria left, I stood in my quiet apartment, surrounded by wedding planning materials, and feeling a strange sense of unease I couldn't shake. Everything should have been perfect. I was marrying my best friend, surrounded by family and friends in a beautiful venue. So why did I feel like something was lurking just beneath the surface, waiting to disrupt my carefully planned happiness? I shook off the feeling and headed to my closet to choose an outfit for lunch. In 3 months, I'd be Mrs. David Chen, and nothing was going to change that.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. 2 weeks had passed since that strange morning in my apartment, and the wedding preparations had shifted into high gear. The Roosevelt Hotel's event coordinator, Margaret Sullivan, had become my new best friend as we navigated the intricate details of hosting 200 guests for what Linda Chen insisted on calling the social event of the season. I was running late for my final dress fitting at Madame Rousseau's boutique in Lincoln Park when my phone rang. Victoria's name flashed on the screen, and I answered while trying to hail a taxi on the busy street. "Irene, you'll never guess what just happened." Victoria's voice practically vibrated with excitement through the phone. "I just had coffee with Jake Morrison." My hand froze mid-wave at an approaching cab. "What? How did that happen?" "Well, I was at that cute cafe on Armitage. You know, the one with the exposed brick walls that looks so good on Instagram? Anyway, I was there working on a post when I noticed this incredibly attractive man at the corner table with all this camera equipment spread out. And I thought to myself, that looks like professional photography gear. So I decided to introduce myself. The taxi pulled up and I slid into the back seat, giving the driver the boutique address. "Victoria, please tell me you didn't what? Network? Make connections?" "Irene, it turns out Jake was scouting locations for an upcoming fashion shoot. We ended up talking for over an hour about photography, social media, the visual art scene in Chicago. He's incredibly sophisticated and well-traveled. Did you know he spent 2 years photographing weddings in Tuscany?" Something cold settled in my stomach. No, I didn't know that. He showed me some of his European work on his laptop. Absolutely breathtaking stuff. These Italian brides look like they stepped out of a Renaissance painting. He has such an artistic eye for capturing feminine beauty. The way Victoria kept emphasizing certain words, artistic, feminine beauty, made me increasingly uncomfortable. This wasn't just casual conversation about wedding photography. "Anyway," Victoria continued, "he mentioned that he's been looking forward to your wedding because it's exactly the kind of elegant, classic event that really showcases his style. He said something really interesting, though." "What's that?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to hear the answer. He said that while he always focuses on making the bride look stunning, he's noticed that sometimes the most photogenic person at the wedding isn't actually the bride herself. Isn't that fascinating from an artistic perspective? The taxi pulled up to Madame Rousseau's boutique, but I remained seated, processing Victoria's words. I'm not sure what you mean. Oh, just that beauty is so subjective, and photographers have to work with what they're given. Some people are naturally more photogenic than others. It's not personal, it's just genetics and bone structure. I paid the taxi driver and stepped onto the sidewalk, my mind reeling. Was Victoria actually suggesting that she might be more photogenic than me at my own wedding? The thought was so audacious, so completely inappropriate, that I almost couldn't believe I was interpreting her words correctly. Victoria, I have to go. I'm at my dress fitting. Oh, perfect! Take lots of photos and send them to me. I want to see how the alterations turned out. And Irene, Jake mentioned that he's doing an engagement shoot for another couple this Saturday at North Avenue Beach. I was thinking of stopping by to watch a professional photographer work, for educational purposes. Before I could respond, she hung up, leaving me standing on the sidewalk with a growing sense of dread. Inside Madame Rousseau's boutique, the familiar scent of lavender and silk enveloped me. The elderly French seamstress Marie greeted me with her usual warm smile and gentle accent. Ah, my chérie, you are here for the final fitting, yes? Come, your dress, she is waiting for you like a lover. In the fitting room, Marie helped me into my grandmother's restored gown. The silk felt like liquid against my skin, and the intricate beadwork caught the boutique's soft lighting beautifully. This was the moment I'd been dreaming about, seeing myself as a bride finally ready to marry the man I loved. But as I looked at my reflection in the three-way mirror, all I could hear was Victoria's voice. Sometimes the most photogenic person at the wedding isn't actually the bride herself. Something is troubling you, Marie observed, pinning a small adjustment at the waist. Your face, she is not happy like a bride should be. I forced a smile. Just wedding nerves, I think. Marie made a gentle humming sound that suggested she didn't entirely believe me. In my 40 years of making wedding dresses, I have seen many brides with nerves, but your expression, it is different. Someone has planted a seed of doubt, non? Her perceptiveness caught me off guard. It's nothing serious, just family dynamics. Ah, Marie nodded knowingly. Family. Sometimes the people who should be most happy for us are the ones who struggle the most with our joy. Jealousy, she is a terrible thing, especially between sisters. The word jealousy hung in the air like an accusation. Had Marie somehow intuited the source of my anxiety, or was I being paranoid? My sister is my maid of honor, I said carefully. She's been very involved in the planning process.
And this involvement, it makes you feel supported, or, how do you say, overshadowed? I stared at my reflection, trying to see myself objectively. I wasn't conventionally gorgeous like Victoria. I didn't have her height, her dramatic bone structure, or her ability to command attention just by walking into a room. But I had always been comfortable with who I was, confident in my own quiet way. I suppose I've never thought of myself as the kind of person who would be the most beautiful woman in any room, I admitted. Marie stepped back from her work and looked at me seriously. Ma chérie, beauty is not a competition. On your wedding day, you will be radiant not because of your dress or your makeup, but because you are celebrating love. This glow, it cannot be imitated or stolen by anyone else. Her words were comforting, but they didn't address my growing concern about Victoria's behavior. The coffee meeting with Jake Morrison seemed innocent enough on the surface, but combined with her comments about photogenic beauty and her sudden interest in watching him work at other events, a troubling pattern was emerging. My phone buzzed with a text message from David. "How's the dress fitting going? Can't wait to see you in it, but not until the wedding day, of course." His message reminded me of why I was doing all of this, not for the photos or the attention, but to celebrate our love with the people who cared about us. I typed back, "The dress is perfect. Can't wait to marry you." As Marie finished the final adjustments, my phone rang again. This time, it was my mother, calling from her home in Milwaukee, where she'd moved after my father's death 3 years earlier.
"Hi, Mom," I answered, still admiring my reflection in the wedding dress. "Hello, sweetheart. I just got off the phone with Victoria. She told me she's been helping you with some of the wedding planning details." Something in my mother's tone immediately put me on alert. Yes, she's been involved. She mentioned that she's been spending time with your photographer, learning about the artistic side of wedding photography. She seemed quite enthusiastic about it. I could hear the careful diplomacy in my mother's voice, the way she spoke when she was trying not to criticize Victoria directly, but wanted to express concern. "Mom, is there something specific you wanted to say?" There was a long pause before she answered. "Irene, you know I love both my daughters equally, but Victoria has always had a tendency to compete for attention, especially when the focus is on someone else. I just want to make sure that your wedding day remains about you and David." The fact that even my mother had picked up on something concerning validated my growing unease. "What exactly did Victoria say to you?" "Nothing inappropriate exactly, but she spent a lot of time talking about this photographer and how impressed he was with her understanding of visual aesthetics. She also mentioned something about helping to elevate the overall look of your wedding photos." Marie finished with the dress and helped me carefully step out of it, wrapping it in protective tissue paper. As I changed back into my street clothes, I tried to process what my mother was telling me. "Did she say anything else?" "She asked about the dress you're wearing. Very specific questions about the style, the color, the neckline. When I asked why, she said she wanted to make sure her maid of honor dress would complement yours perfectly. But then she said something odd." "What?" "She said it would be such a shame if the bride got lost in her own photos because someone else accidentally upstaged her. When I asked what she meant, she laughed and said she was just thinking out loud about color coordination." The conversation was making me feel physically ill. Victoria was clearly planning something, but I couldn't figure out exactly what or how to stop it without seeming paranoid or creating family drama. "Mom, what do you think I should do?" "Trust your instincts, sweetheart, and remember that your wedding day is about celebrating your love with David. Don't let anyone steal that joy from you." After hanging up, I stood outside the boutique holding my perfectly altered wedding dress and feeling like everything was spinning out of control. Victoria's behavior was escalating from subtle comments to active planning, and I had no idea how to address it without causing a family crisis just weeks before my wedding. My phone buzzed with an Instagram notification. Victoria had posted a new photo, a sophisticated black and white selfie with the caption, "Some days you just feel absolutely radiant. #natural beauty, #glow up, #confidence is key." The timing felt deliberate, like a message meant specifically for me. As I hailed another taxi to take me home, I realized that whatever Victoria was planning for my wedding day, it was already in motion.
The rehearsal dinner was exactly 1 week away when I finally decided I couldn't ignore Victoria's behavior any longer. The tipping point came on a rainy Thursday afternoon when I received a group text from my bridesmaids that made my blood run cold. The message was from my college roommate Sarah, who was flying in from Portland for the wedding. "Ladies, Victoria just sent me the most gorgeous dress options for the reception. I thought we were all wearing the navy blue dresses Irene picked out. Victoria says there's been a change of plans?" My heart stopped. I immediately called Sarah, stepping out of the marketing meeting I was attending at my nonprofit job. "Sarah, what exactly did Victoria send you?" "Hold on, let me pull up the email. Okay, she sent photos of this stunning off-white cocktail dress from some high-end boutique. It's gorgeous, but it's definitely not navy blue. She said you decided the navy was too safe and wanted something more elegant for the photos." Off-white. Victoria had suggested off-white bridesmaids' dresses for my wedding. "Sarah, I never approved any dress changes. We're sticking with the navy blue dresses we chose 3 months ago." There was an uncomfortable silence on the other end. "Irene, I'm so sorry. I should have checked with you first, but Victoria was so confident about the change, and she said time was running short to order them." After reassuring Sarah and sending a group text to all my bridesmaids confirming that the navy dresses were still the plan, I sat in my car in the parking lot, shaking with anger and disbelief.
Victoria had actually tried to convince my bridesmaids to wear white to my wedding. The audacity was breathtaking. My phone rang immediately. Victoria. Irene, I think there's been some confusion about the bridesmaids' dresses, she said, her tone perfectly innocent. I was just trying to help by finding some alternatives that would photograph better. Victoria, you told my bridesmaids to wear off-white dresses to my wedding. Not off-white, more like champagne. It's completely different. And I wasn't telling them anything. I was just showing them options. You've been so busy with work and wedding planning, I thought I could handle this one detail. The gaslighting was so smooth, so practiced, that for a moment I almost questioned my own reaction. But then I remembered my mother's warning and Marie's observation about jealousy between sisters. The navy dresses are final, Victoria. Please don't contact my bridesmaids about dress changes again. Of course, Victoria replied, but I could hear something cold in her voice. I was just trying to help make your photos more cohesive. Jake mentioned that color coordination is really important for creating stunning wedding albums. There it was again, Jake's supposed professional opinion being used to justify Victoria's increasingly inappropriate suggestions. When did you talk to Jake about our wedding photos? Oh, we've stayed in touch since that coffee meeting. He's been giving me some really valuable insights about wedding photography. Did you know he's available for engagement shoots? He could do some beautiful photos of me and Marcus before your wedding. The idea of Victoria having her own photo session with my wedding photographer felt like another violation of boundaries, but I wasn't sure how to object without sounding petty. I have to go, Victoria. I'll see you at the rehearsal dinner next week. That evening, I met David at our favorite Thai restaurant near his apartment in River North. He took one look at my face and immediately ordered a bottle of wine. Rough day? He asked, reaching across the table to take my hand. My sister is trying to sabotage our wedding. I told him everything. The coffee meeting with Jake, the comments about photogenic beauty, the attempted dress change, the constant references to the photographer's opinions. David listened without interrupting, his expression growing more serious as the story unfolded. Irene, this has gone way beyond normal sibling rivalry. Victoria is actively trying to upstage you at your own wedding. But she's my maid of honor. She's my sister. How do I confront her without destroying our relationship permanently? David was quiet for a long moment, swirling his wine thoughtfully. What if we talked to Jake directly? He's our photographer. He works for us. If Victoria has been inappropriately involving herself in our wedding planning, he should know that we don't approve. The suggestion made perfect sense, but it also felt like an escalation that might make the situation worse. What if Victoria finds out we went behind her back? Irene, she's already going behind your back. She tried to change your bridesmaids' dresses without telling you. She's been meeting privately with our photographer. At what point do you stop worrying about her feelings and start protecting your own wedding? He was right, and I knew it. But the thought of confronting the situation directly filled me with dread. Victoria had always been the more dominant personality in our relationship. Even as adults, I often found myself deferring to her opinions or going along with her plans to avoid conflict. There's something else, I admitted. I've been having these dreams where I'm standing at the altar and everyone is looking past me at something else. When I turn around, Victoria is there in a white dress and Jake is taking photos of her instead of me. David squeezed my hand. That's not going to happen. I won't let it happen. But what if she's right? What if she really is more photogenic than me? What if our wedding photos end up being all about her? Listen to me, David said firmly. You are the most beautiful woman in the world to me, not because of your bone structure or your Instagram followers, but because of who you are, because of the way you laugh at terrible movies, the way you volunteer at the animal shelter every weekend, the way you make everyone around you feel valued and loved. That's the beauty I fell in love with, and that's what our photographer is going to capture. His words made me cry, happy tears mixed with tears of frustration and anxiety. I just want our wedding day to be about us, about our love and our commitment to each other. Then we need to make sure that's what happens. Tomorrow, we're calling Jake Morrison and having a very clear conversation about expectations and boundaries. The next morning, David and I sat in his apartment's home office with Jake Morrison on speakerphone. I had rehearsed what I wanted to say, but my heart was pounding as David dialed the number. Jake, hi, it's David Chen. I have Irene here with me, and we wanted to discuss a few things about the wedding photography. Of course! I'm looking forward to your big day. Just 1 week away now, right? Actually, that's what we wanted to talk about, I said, finding my voice. It's come to our attention that my sister Victoria has been consulting with you about various aspects of our wedding. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Ah, yes, Victoria has reached out a few times with questions about photography techniques and composition. Jake, I need to be very clear about something, David interjected. Irene and I are your clients. Any decisions about our wedding photography should go through us directly, not through family members. Absolutely. I completely understand. I hope I haven't overstepped any boundaries. Victoria presented herself as being very involved in the planning process, and some of her questions seemed legitimate. What kind of questions? I asked. Another pause. Well, she asked about lighting techniques for highlighting different people in group photos. She also inquired about whether I ever recommend specific poses or positioning to make certain individuals more prominent in the shots. My stomach dropped. Victoria had been coaching our photographer on how to make her stand out in our wedding photos. Jake, let me be absolutely clear, I said, surprised by the firmness in my own voice. On our wedding day, David and I are your focus. While we want beautiful photos of our family and wedding party, we are hiring you to document our wedding, not to create a portfolio for my sister. Of course. I'm sorry if there was any confusion. Your wedding day is about celebrating your love story, and that's exactly what my photography will reflect. David jumped in. We also want to make sure you understand that any suggestions Victoria might have made about poses, composition, or focus should be disregarded. We trust your professional judgment, but we want those decisions to be yours alone. Understood completely. And I want you both to know that I've been photographing weddings for 8 years, and my priority is always making the bride and groom feel comfortable and confident. Everything else is secondary. After we hung up, I felt simultaneously relieved and terrified. We had drawn a clear line, but I knew Victoria wouldn't react well when she discovered her influence had been cut off. Do you think we should tell her what we did? I asked David. I think we should wait and see how she behaves at the rehearsal dinner. If she's planning something dramatic for the wedding day, she might tip her hand during the rehearsal. The decision felt empowering and frightening. For the first time in my life, I had chosen to prioritize my own needs over Victoria's wishes, even when it might cause family conflict. But as I looked at David, seeing the love and support in his eyes, I realized that this was what marriage was about, creating a new family unit that came first, even when it meant disappointing other people we cared about. 1 week, I said. In 1 week, we'll be married and none of this drama will matter anymore. David kissed my forehead. In 1 week, you'll be my wife, and that's the only thing that matters. I wish I could feel as confident as he sounded, but something told me Victoria wasn't going to give up easily. The rehearsal dinner was going to be a test of whether our intervention had worked or if we were about to face an even bigger confrontation.
The rehearsal dinner at Gibson's Bar and Steakhouse should have been a celebration, but I felt like I was walking into a battlefield. David's family had reserved the entire private dining room, and the space buzzed with excitement as relatives from both sides mingled over cocktails and appetizers. I wore a simple black cocktail dress, elegant but understated, wanting to save my dramatic moments for the actual wedding day. Victoria arrived 20 minutes late, making her entrance in a stunning red silk dress that hugged every curve perfectly. She looked absolutely radiant, and I watched as conversations paused when she walked through the room. Even David's normally reserved Uncle Frank stopped mid-sentence to admire her.
Irene, darling. Victoria swept over to me with air kisses and a brilliant smile. You look lovely. Very appropriate for a rehearsal dinner. The backhanded compliment stung, but I was prepared for Victoria's games tonight. Thank you. You look beautiful, as always. I had the most interesting conversation with Jake Morrison today. He called to clarify some details about tomorrow's photography timeline. My heart rate spiked. David and I had specifically asked Jake not to discuss our wedding with Victoria, but apparently she had found another way to contact him. What kind of details? I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. Oh, just logistical things. He wanted to confirm the timing for family photos and make sure he understood everyone's roles in the wedding party. He seemed concerned about something, but he wouldn't say what. Before I could respond, my mother appeared at my elbow, looking elegant in navy blue and clearly having overheard Victoria's comment. Victoria, sweetheart, how are you handling the maid of honor responsibilities? It's such an important role. My mother said with pointed sweetness, I'm managing everything perfectly. In fact, I've been thinking about the processional order. Traditionally, the maid of honor walks right before the bride, but I was wondering if we might consider having me walk after the other bridesmaids, but before the flower girl. It would create better visual balance for the photographer. I stared at her. Victoria was trying to change the processional order to make herself more prominent in the ceremony photos. The processional order was finalized months ago, I said firmly. We're not changing it now. Victoria's smile never wavered, but something cold flashed in her green eyes. Of course, it's your day. I just thought the photos might look more dynamic with better spacing between the key players. Key players? My mother repeated, her voice taking on a dangerous edge that I remembered from my childhood when she was about to discipline one of us. Well, the bride, obviously, but also the people who will be most prominent in the wedding album. The photographer has to consider composition and visual interest. David appeared beside me, sliding his arm around my waist in a gesture that felt both protective and possessive. Victoria, I think there might be some confusion. Jake works for Irene and me. All photography decisions go through us. The tension in our small group was becoming palpable, and I noticed that conversations around us were starting to quiet as people sensed drama brewing. Of course, Victoria said breezily. I'm just trying to be helpful. You know how much I care about making sure Irene looks absolutely perfect in her photos. Linda Chen chose that moment to approach our group, resplendent in an elegant champagne-colored mother of the bride dress. Irene, dear, we're about to start the rehearsal. Is everyone ready? The next hour passed in a blur of coordinated movements and detailed instructions from the wedding coordinator. Victoria played her role perfectly during the practice run, walking down the aisle at the correct pace, standing in the right position, smiling appropriately. But I caught her scanning the room constantly, as if she was memorizing angles and sight lines for some future purpose. During dinner, Victoria positioned herself strategically at the head table, where she could be seen by most of the room. She charmed David's relatives with stories about our childhood, painting herself as the protective older sister who had always looked out for me. Her performance was flawless, and I began to doubt my own concerns. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe Victoria really was just trying to be helpful.
Then Marcus, Victoria's boyfriend, leaned over to David during the main course. Hey, David, I wanted to ask you something, Marcus said in a voice just loud enough for me to hear. Victoria mentioned that your photographer might be interested in doing some portfolio work with her. She's been thinking about getting into modeling, and apparently he thinks she has the look for it. David's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. I'm sorry, what? Yeah, Jake Morrison, right? Victoria said he was really impressed with her bone structure and suggested they do a test shoot after your wedding. She's pretty excited about it. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Victoria had been presenting herself to our wedding photographer as a potential model, using our wedding as her audition opportunity. Marcus, I think there might be some miscommunication, David said carefully. Jake Morrison is our wedding photographer. He's not a talent scout. Marcus looked confused.
But Victoria said he specifically commented on her photogenic qualities and asked if she'd ever considered professional modeling. She's been researching modeling agencies all week. Across the table, Victoria was deep in conversation with David's grandmother, gesturing animatedly about something. She looked completely innocent, completely focused on charming the elderly woman with stories that were making her laugh. After dinner, during the cocktail hour, I pulled Victoria aside near the restaurant's bar area. "Victoria, we need to talk." "Of course, sweetheart. What's on your mind?" "Marcus just told David that you're planning to do a modeling shoot with Jake Morrison after our wedding." Victoria's expression didn't change, but I caught a micro-expression of annoyance before she smiled. "Marcus misunderstood. Jake and I were just discussing the art of photography in general. If he happens to think I have an interesting look, well, that's flattering, but it's not relevant to your wedding. It's relevant because you're using our wedding photographer to advance your own agenda." "Irene, you're being paranoid. I'm your maid of honor. Everything I do is about supporting you and making your day special." "Then why did you try to change the bridesmaid dress colors? Why are you questioning the processional order? Why are you having private conversations with our photographer?" For the first time all evening, Victoria's perfect composure cracked slightly. "I'm trying to help you create the best possible wedding experience. If you can't appreciate that, maybe the stress is getting to you more than I realized." The gaslighting was so smooth that I almost apologized, but then I remembered David's words about protecting our wedding day. "Irene, I need you to promise me something. Tomorrow is my wedding day. I need you to focus on being my maid of honor, not on getting attention for yourself." Victoria studied my face for a long moment, and I saw something calculating in her expression. "Of course, Irene. Tomorrow is all about you. I promise." But as she walked away to rejoin the party, I noticed her pulling out her phone and typing something quickly. Within seconds, my phone buzzed with a notification that Victoria had tagged me in a new Instagram post. The photo was from earlier in the evening, a group shot of the wedding party that someone had taken during cocktails. But Victoria had cropped it so that she was prominently featured in the center, with me barely visible on the edge of the frame. The caption read, "So grateful to be part of tomorrow's celebration. Some sisters are blessed with natural grace. #wedding party, #blessed, #sister love." The post already had dozens of likes and comments praising Victoria's beauty and asking about her dress. Not a single comment mentioned that it was supposed to be about my wedding. I showed it to David, who read it with growing anger. "She's unbelievable. She's literally using your rehearsal dinner to promote herself on social media." "What do I do? If I ask her to take it down, I'll look petty and controlling." "You don't do anything tonight," David said firmly. "Tomorrow morning, Jake Morrison is going to get very clear instructions about who should be the focus of our wedding photos. And if Victoria tries anything inappropriate during the ceremony or reception, I'll handle it." As we said goodbye to our families and headed home to get ready for our wedding day, I felt a mixture of determination and dread. I had finally acknowledged that Victoria was actively trying to sabotage my wedding, and I had taken steps to protect myself. But I also knew that my sister was clever, manipulative, and desperate for attention. The real test would come tomorrow, when all eyes would be on us, and Victoria would have her biggest stage yet to make her play for the spotlight. "In 12 hours, we'll be married," David said as he kissed me goodnight at my apartment door. "In 12 hours, we'll know if we managed to have the wedding we actually wanted." As I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling and listening to the sounds of Chicago traffic outside my window, I tried to prepare myself for whatever Victoria had planned. I had spent weeks being reactive, responding to her manipulations after they happened. Tomorrow, I needed to be proactive. Tomorrow, I needed to be ready for war.
My wedding day dawned gray and drizzly, with thick clouds hanging over Lake Michigan like a bad omen. I woke up at 5:30 a.m. in my childhood bedroom at my mother's house, where I'd stayed the night before following tradition. The familiar lavender wallpaper and collection of horse figurines from my teenage years should have been comforting, but all I felt was a knot of anxiety in my stomach. The bridal suite at the Roosevelt Hotel wasn't available until 10 a.m., So the plan was for the bridal party to get ready at my mother's house in Evanston before heading downtown for photos. Victoria had insisted on arriving early to help coordinate everything, which meant she'd been bustling around the house since 6 a.m., ostensibly organizing hair and makeup schedules. "Irene, honey, you need to eat something," my mother said, appearing in my doorway with a plate of toast and scrambled eggs. "You can't get married on an empty stomach." I managed a few bites while scrolling through my phone, checking the weather forecast, and trying to distract myself from pre-wedding jitters. That's when I saw Victoria's latest Instagram story from this morning, a perfectly staged photo of her in a silk robe with professional quality makeup holding a cup of coffee. The caption read, "Early morning wedding prep. Some days you wake up feeling like a goddess. #wedding day, glowing, blessed." The post had been up for less than an hour and already had hundreds of views and dozens of responses. What bothered me wasn't just the narcissism, but the fact that she was live documenting my wedding day as if it were her personal photo shoot. At 8 a.m., the hair and makeup team arrived. 3 professionals I'd hired after extensive research and consultations. I had been very specific about wanting a natural, romantic look that would complement my vintage dress and the classic elegance of our venue. "Good morning, Irene," chirped Melissa, the lead makeup artist. "We're so excited to make you absolutely radiant for your big day. I have all your inspiration photos and we're going to create exactly the look you wanted." But as the team set up their equipment in my mother's dining room, Victoria immediately inserted herself into the conversation. "Actually, I had some thoughts about the overall aesthetic," Victoria announced, pulling out her phone to show what appeared to be a Pinterest board. "I've been researching current bridal trends, and I think we might want to go a bit more dramatic than originally planned. Something more photogenic for the professional photos." Melissa looked confused, glancing between Victoria and me. "I'm sorry, who are you?" "I'm the maid of honor and the bride's sister. I've been coordinating a lot of the wedding details." Victoria's smile was dazzling as she positioned herself as the authority figure in the room. "Victoria, we're sticking with the look I chose," I said firmly, but I could hear the uncertainty in my own voice. "Of course, sweetie. I just want to make sure you don't look washed out in the photos. Jake Morrison mentioned that certain makeup techniques work better with his lighting style." There it was again. Victoria invoking our photographer's supposed expertise to override my decisions. But this time, something snapped inside me. "When exactly did Jake Morrison discuss makeup techniques with you?" I asked, my voice sharper than I'd ever used with my sister. Victoria's perfect composure flickered for just a moment. "We've talked about various aspects of wedding photography. He's very thorough about ensuring optimal results." "Victoria, step into the kitchen with me now." In the privacy of my mother's kitchen, I faced my sister with 24 years of suppressed frustration finally coming to the surface. "I know what you're doing," I said quietly. "I know you've been sabotaging my wedding planning for weeks. The bridesmaid dresses, the processional order, the private meetings with my photographer. You're trying to make my wedding day about you." Victoria's mask slipped completely, and for the first time I saw raw anger in her expression. "You have no idea what you're talking about. I know you told Marcus that Jake wants to do a modeling shoot with you. I know you've been coaching him on how to make you stand out in photos. I know you're planning something today." "You're being paranoid and jealous," Victoria snapped. "Just because you've never been comfortable with the fact that I'm more photogenic than you doesn't mean I'm sabotaging anything." The words hung in the air between us like a slap. Victoria had finally said out loud what she'd been implying for weeks, that she was more beautiful than me, more deserving of attention, more worthy of being photographed. "There it is," I said softly. "That's what this is really about." Victoria's eyes blazed with something that looked almost like hatred. "Do you want to know the truth, Irene? Jake Morrison took one look at me and asked if I was a professional model. He said I had the kind of bone structure and natural presence that photographers dream of working with. He said most brides pale in comparison to their wedding party, but rarely happens when someone like me is in the pictures." Each word was designed to wound, and they hit their target perfectly. But instead of crumbling,
I felt something new rising inside me. Not just anger, but a fierce protectiveness of my own happiness. "Even if that were true," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart, "today is still my wedding day. Today is still about me marrying the man I love. And if you can't respect that, then maybe you shouldn't be my maid of honor." Victoria stared at me as if I'd grown a second head. In our entire relationship, I had never threatened to exclude her from anything important. "You wouldn't dare," she said. "Try me." We stood there, in my mother's kitchen, two sisters who had shared everything from bedtime stories to broken hearts, now facing each other as adversaries. Victoria's perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide the calculation in her expression as she weighed our options. Finally, she forced her smile back into place. "Irene, I think the wedding stress is making you imagine things that aren't there. I love you, and I would never do anything to hurt your special day. Let's just focus on getting you ready to marry David." But I could see through her performance now. Victoria had revealed her true feelings, and there was no going back to pretending this was about sisterly support. "Fine," I said, "but I'm calling Jake Morrison right now to make sure he understands exactly who his client is." Victoria's composure cracked again. "That's not necessary. I'm sure there won't be any confusion." I pulled out my phone and dialed Jake's number while staring directly at Victoria. He answered on the second ring. "Jake, it's Irene. I'm calling to confirm something very important about today's photography." "Of course, Irene. What can I clarify for you?" "I need you to understand that David and I are your only clients today. Any previous conversations you may have had with my sister about modeling opportunities or photography techniques should be completely disregarded. Today is about documenting our wedding, period." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Irene, I want to be completely honest with you. Your sister has contacted me multiple times over the past few weeks with various suggestions about poses, lighting, and composition. I've tried to be polite, but some of her requests were unusual for a wedding photography context." My heart pounded. "What kind of requests?" "She asked me to research poses that would make the maid of honor more prominent in group shots. She also inquired about whether I ever recommend that brides tone down their makeup or styling to avoid competing with more photogenic wedding party members." Victoria had gone pale during this conversation, realizing that her manipulations were being exposed in real time. "Jake, I need you to promise me something. Today, you work exclusively with David and me. No suggestions from family members, no special requests from the wedding party. Can you do that?" "Absolutely. And Irene, I want you to know that in 8 years of wedding photography, I've never encountered this kind of interference from a family member. You were right to address it directly." After hanging up, I turned to face Victoria, who was now visibly shaken. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, with a calm I didn't know I possessed. "You're going to go get your hair and makeup done. You're going to put on your navy blue bridesmaid dress. You're going to walk down that aisle and stand beside me as my maid of honor. And you're going to smile and celebrate my marriage to David without trying to steal a single moment of attention." "And if I don't," Victoria asked defiantly, "then I'll ask security to escort you out of my wedding and I'll never speak to you again." The threat was real, and we both knew it. Victoria searched my face for any sign of weakness, but for the first time in my life, I felt completely certain of my position. "You've changed," she said, finally. "Yes, I have." As Victoria left the kitchen to rejoin the bridal preparations, I realized that this confrontation had been inevitable. For years, I had accommodated Victoria's need to be the center of attention, making myself smaller so she could shine brighter. But today was my day, and I was finally ready to claim it. The crisis had forced me to find a strength I didn't know I had. Now I just had to hope it would be enough to protect the wedding I dreamed of. The transformation in the bridal preparation room was immediate and unmistakable. After my confrontation with Victoria in the kitchen, I returned to find the atmosphere had completely shifted. My mother, who had clearly overheard parts of our conversation, was directing the hair and makeup team with newfound authority, while my bridesmaids, Sarah, my college roommate, Jessica, David's sister, and our mutual friend Amanda sensed the tension and rallied around me with protective energy. "Irene, let's focus on making you absolutely gorgeous," Melissa, the makeup artist, said warmly. "I'm going to create exactly the look you originally wanted, romantic, timeless, and perfect for your vintage dress." Victoria sat in the corner getting her hair styled, unusually quiet and subdued. Gone was her morning chattiness and constant stream of helpful suggestions. Instead, she scrolled through her phone with tight-lipped concentration, occasionally glancing up to observe the preparations with calculating eyes. But something remarkable was happening to me. The clarity I'd found during our kitchen confrontation was spreading through every aspect of the wedding preparation. For the first time in weeks, I felt completely in control of my own day. "Mom, I changed my mind about the jewelry," I announced, surprising myself with the decisiveness in my voice. "I want to wear great-grandmother's diamond earrings instead of the pearl ones. They'll catch the light better in photos." My mother smiled, a proud, knowing smile that told me she'd been waiting for this moment of self-advocacy. "Perfect choice, sweetheart. They'll be stunning with your dress." As Melissa worked on my makeup, I made a series of quick decisions that I'd been agonizing over for weeks. I asked Jessica to rearrange the bouquet design to include more white roses and fewer baby's breath. I texted the wedding coordinator to confirm that the processional music should be played at a slower tempo than we'd rehearsed. I even called the florist to add extra lighting to the altar arrangements. Each decision felt natural and right, as if I'd finally tuned into some internal frequency that had been drowned out by weeks of anxiety and people-pleasing. "You seem different today," Sarah observed as she helped me step into my grandmother's dress. "More centered, I guess." "I feel different," I admitted, smoothing the ivory skirt. "I feel like I'm actually getting married instead of just surviving someone else's version of my wedding." The dress fit perfectly, the ivory silk flowing like liquid moonlight and the hand-sewn beadwork catching every ray of light streaming through my mother's bedroom windows. When I looked in the full-length mirror, I saw exactly what I'd dreamed of, a bride who looked elegant, confident, and radiantly happy. My phone buzzed with a text from David. "In 3 hours, you'll be my wife. I love you more than all the stars in the sky." I texted back, "I love you more than all the words in every language. See you at the altar." Victoria's phone chimed at almost the same moment, and I caught her reading a message with a slight frown. She typed back quickly, then glanced up to find me watching her. "Everything okay?" I asked, though my tone was more polite than concerned. "Marcus is running late. Some issue with his tuxedo rental," Victoria replied coolly. "He might miss the pre-ceremony photos." Something about her response felt off, but I was no longer in the mood to decode Victoria's manipulations. If Marcus was late, it would be inconvenient, but not catastrophic. I had bigger things to focus on. At 1 p.m., we arrived at the Roosevelt Hotel in a convoy of cars. The bridal suite was everything I dreamed of. A spacious room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Grant Park, elegant furniture, and perfect lighting for final preparations. Jake Morrison was already there, setting up his equipment and chatting with Margaret, the event coordinator. "Irene, you look absolutely stunning," Jake said warmly as I entered. "That dress is a work of art, and you're glowing." "Thank you. I'm excited to work with you today." I noticed Jake glance briefly at Victoria as she entered behind me, but his expression remained completely professional. Whatever spell she had tried to cast during their previous conversations had clearly been broken by our morning phone call. "I'd like to start with some individual bridal portraits while the light is perfect," Jake suggested. "Then we'll move to family photos, wedding party shots, and finally the couple's portraits before the ceremony." For the next hour, I felt like a completely different person in front of Jake's camera. Instead of worrying about whether I was photogenic enough or if my smile looked natural,
I focused on the joy of the moment. I thought about David waiting for me at the altar, about the life we were building together, about the celebration we were sharing with everyone we loved. "Gorgeous, Irene. You're a natural," Jake encouraged as he captured dozens of shots. "Think about David's face when he sees you walking down the aisle." The images appearing on his camera's preview screen showed a confident, radiant bride who looked nothing like the anxious woman I'd been for the past month. This version of me had bright eyes, genuine smiles, and an unmistakable aura of happiness. When it came time for the wedding party photos, I positioned myself confidently in the center of our group with Victoria beside me in her navy blue dress. She looked beautiful, but for once, she didn't dominate the frame or command all the attention. Instead, she appeared to be exactly what she was supposed to be, one of several people there to support and celebrate me. "Ladies, you all look incredible," Jake said as he arranged us for various shots. "Irene, you're absolutely glowing. The camera loves you today." I caught Victoria's subtle flinch at Jake's compliment and realized that our morning confrontation had achieved something I hadn't expected. It had freed me from the constant anxiety of competing with her. When I stopped worrying about whether she was more photogenic than me, I became more photogenic than I'd ever been in my life. The family photos went smoothly, with both our mothers beaming with pride and our fathers looking distinguished in their formal wear. Linda Chen, David's mother, even teared up slightly when she saw me in my full bridal ensemble. "Irene, you're going to make David so happy," she said, squeezing my hands. "You look like a princess." But the real transformation became apparent during the final preparations before the ceremony. As my bridesmaids bustled around me, making last-minute adjustments to my dress and veil, I found myself giving clear, confident directions instead of anxiously asking for opinions. "Sarah, can you make sure the train is spread evenly? Jessica, I need you to hold my bouquet during the ring exchange. Amanda, please keep an eye on the flower girl. She looks nervous." Even Victoria seemed surprised by my newfound assertiveness. She approached me as I was putting on my great-grandmother's diamond earrings. "Irene, I want you to know that you look beautiful today." And for the first time in weeks, her voice carried no hidden agenda. "Really, beautiful." "Thank you," I replied simply. "I feel beautiful." It was a strange moment of truce between us, and I realized that by standing up for myself, I had somehow given Victoria permission to step back from her destructive behavior. She was still my sister, still the person who had taught me how to braid my hair and had held me when I cried over my first heartbreak. The manipulation and jealousy were real, but so was the underlying love between us. At 3:45 p.m., Margaret appeared at the bridal suite door. "Ladies, it's time. The ceremony begins in 15 minutes. As we lined up for the processional, I felt a surge of pure, uncomplicated joy. David was waiting for me at the altar. Our families and friends had gathered to witness our love story. The flowers were perfect. The music was beautiful, and I was wearing my grandmother's dress with her diamonds sparkling in my ears. Most importantly, I was finally completely myself, not a diminished version designed to accommodate someone else's insecurities, but the full, confident, radiant woman David had fallen in love with. Victoria took her place at the front of our processional line, looking elegant and appropriate in her navy blue dress. She caught my eye and nodded, not the calculating look I'd grown used to, but something that resembled genuine sisterly support. "Ready?" my father asked, offering me his arm. "More ready than I have ever been in my life," I replied. As the ceremony music began and the doors to the ballroom opened, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead in the next hour, I was prepared to face them as the strong, self-assured bride I had finally become.
The Roosevelt Hotel's grand ballroom was transformed into something from a fairy tale. 200 guests filled the gold-accented chairs arranged in perfect rows, with white roses and greenery creating an elegant pathway to the altar. Soft afternoon light filtered through the massive windows, casting everything in a romantic golden glow that made the entire space feel magical. I stood behind the closed ballroom doors with my father, listening to the string quartet play the processional music we'd chosen months ago. Through the frosted glass, I could see the shadowy figures of our guests rising to their feet in anticipation. "You look radiant, sweetheart," my father whispered, adjusting his boutonniere nervously. "I've never seen you more beautiful or more confident." "I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be," I replied, meaning every word. The doors opened, and our flower girl, David's 6-year-old niece Emma, began her walk down the aisle, scattering rose petals with serious concentration. The sight of her tiny figure in her white dress made several guests coo with delight, and I felt my heart swell with love for this moment we'd all created together. Amanda walked down the aisle first, then Jessica, both looking stunning in their navy dresses and carrying bouquets of white roses and baby's breath. They moved with the graceful pace we'd practiced, their faces glowing with happiness for David and me. Then it was Victoria's turn. She stepped into the doorway, and I held my breath, unsure what to expect after everything that had happened between us. But as she began her walk down the aisle, she looked perfect, elegant, beautiful, and completely appropriate for her role as my maid of honor. Her smile was genuine as she nodded to familiar faces in the crowd, and she maintained the perfect pace without any theatrical flourishes or attention-seeking behavior. For a moment, I allowed myself to believe that our morning confrontation had truly resolved everything. Victoria had backed down, accepted her role, and was now playing her part exactly as she should be played. Then I noticed something that made my blood run cold. As Victoria reached the halfway point of her walk down the aisle, a shaft of sunlight from the tall windows hit her directly, and I realized that her navy dress wasn't navy at all. In the bright light, the fabric revealed itself to be a deep, rich cream, so close to white that it was unmistakable. Victoria had worn white to my wedding. She had somehow found or altered a dress that looked navy in dim lighting, but appeared clearly white or cream in bright light. As she continued down the aisle, now fully illuminated by the afternoon sun streaming through the ballroom windows, there was no hiding the truth. Gasps began to ripple through the crowd as guests realized what they were seeing. My mother's face went pale with horror. Linda Chen's mouth dropped open in shock. Even David, standing at the altar in his perfectly fitted tuxedo, looked confused and then angry as he processed what was happening. But Victoria continued her walk with perfect composure, her smile never wavering, as if she were completely unaware of the scandal she was creating. She had timed this moment perfectly. Too late for me to stop her, too public for me to address without disrupting the entire ceremony. Jake Morrison, positioned strategically near the altar, was capturing everything with his camera. I could see him recognizing the drama unfolding and making split-second decisions about how to document it professionally while protecting me from having my wedding photos dominated by this betrayal. When Victoria reached the altar and took her position to my left, she finally looked back at me with a smile that was pure triumph. She had played the long game perfectly, appearing to back down this morning while secretly planning the ultimate upstaging moment. The music swelled for my entrance, and I faced the most important decision of my life. Let Victoria sabotage this moment, or rise above it and claim my wedding day anyway. I chose to rise. Taking my father's arm, I stepped into the ballroom doorway and began my walk toward David. As the guests turned to see me, a collective intake of breath filled the room. But this time, it was for all the right reasons. My grandmother's ivory silk dress caught the same golden light that had revealed Victoria's deception, but instead of competing with her cream-colored gown, it made me look like I was literally glowing. The hand-sewn beadwork sparkled with each step. The vintage lace created intricate patterns across the silk, and my great-grandmother's diamonds caught the light like captured stars. More importantly, I was walking down the aisle with absolute confidence and joy. Every step carried me closer to David, whose face had transformed from confusion to pure, radiant love as he watched me approach. His smile was so brilliant, so completely focused on me, that I forgot about Victoria entirely. The guests seemed to sense the shift as well. What had started as a moment of scandal transformed into something magical as they witnessed a bride who was completely secure in her own beauty, her own worth, and her own moment. Victoria's desperate attempt to steal attention only highlighted how radiant and confident I looked by comparison. When I reached the altar, David took my hands and whispered, "You are the most beautiful woman in the world, and I am the luckiest man alive." Behind him, I could see our photographer, Jake, working with professional discretion, angling his shots to minimize Victoria's prominence while capturing the genuine emotion between David and me. He had clearly recognized the situation and was protecting our wedding album from being dominated by the drama. The ceremony proceeded beautifully. Our officiant, Father Michael, from David's childhood parish, spoke eloquently about love, commitment, and the joining of two families. When it came time for our personal vows, David's voice was steady and full of emotion as he promised to love, honor, and cherish me for the rest of his life. My own vows flowed naturally, each word coming from the deepest part of my heart. David, you are my best friend, my greatest love, and my perfect partner. Today, I promise to stand beside you through every joy and every challenge, to grow with you, to laugh with you, and to build a life filled with love, adventure, and endless possibility. There wasn't a dry eye in the house, and even Victoria seemed momentarily affected by the genuine emotion of the moment. But Victoria wasn't finished. During the ring exchange, as David slipped my grandmother's wedding band onto my finger, Victoria suddenly swayed dramatically and pressed her hand to her forehead as if she were about to faint. The movement was perfectly timed to draw attention just as Jake was capturing one of the most important moments of the ceremony. Without missing a beat, my mother rose from her seat and moved swiftly toward Victoria, placing a firm hand on her arm and whispering something that made Victoria immediately straighten up and resume her proper position. My mother's intervention was so smooth and quick that most guests probably thought she was simply adjusting Victoria's dress. The rest of the ceremony continued without incident. When Father Michael pronounced us husband and wife and told David he could kiss his bride, the kiss we shared was perfect, tender, passionate, and completely genuine. The applause from our guests was thunderous, and I felt a surge of pure triumph as we turned to face our family and friends as Mr. and Mrs. Chen. But as we walked back down the aisle together, I caught Victoria's expression, and I realized that her attempts at sabotage weren't over. The cream-colored dress and fake fainting spell were just the opening moves. She was planning something bigger for the reception. During the receiving line, guest after guest congratulated us warmly, but I noticed the careful way they avoided mentioning Victoria's dress choice. Several of David's relatives shot disapproving looks in her direction, and I overheard David's aunt whisper to his uncle, "I can't believe she would wear white to her sister's wedding." My college friends were less diplomatic. Sarah hugged me tightly and whispered, "Irene, you looked absolutely stunning up there. And your sister, well, let's just say she's making herself look desperate and petty while you look like a goddess." The validation from our guests was gratifying, but more importantly, I realized that Victoria's plan had backfired spectacularly. By wearing white to my wedding, she had expected to steal the spotlight and make me look diminished by comparison. Instead, she had made herself look inappropriate and attention-seeking while highlighting my own grace and confidence. As we posed for post-ceremony family photos, Jake Morrison pulled David and me aside.
He want you to know that I got some absolutely beautiful shots during the ceremony. Your joy and love for each other completely dominated every frame. The other situation barely registered in the photos. Thank you, I said, squeezing his arm gratefully. That means everything to us. As we prepared to head to the cocktail hour, I felt a mixture of relief and anticipation. I had passed the ultimate test. Victoria's most dramatic attempt at sabotage had failed to diminish my wedding day. But I knew the reception would bring new challenges, and I needed to stay strong for whatever came next.
The Roosevelt Hotel's Crystal Ballroom had been transformed into a winter wonderland for our reception. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing light across white linens, silver candelabras and centerpieces of white roses and eucalyptus. The room buzzed with the cheerful chatter of 200 guests celebrating our marriage, but I was acutely aware that Victoria's final act was yet to come. David and I made our grand entrance as husband and wife to thunderous applause and the opening notes of At Last by Etta James. As we took our first dance, I felt completely present in the moment. The warmth of David's hand on my waist, the rustle of my silk dress, the faces of everyone we loved watching us with joy and approval. "How are you feeling, Mrs. Chen?" David whispered in my ear as we swayed to the music. "Perfect," I whispered back. "Absolutely perfect." And I meant it. Despite Victoria's attempts to sabotage the ceremony, our wedding had been everything I'd dreamed of. The photos Jake had shown us on his camera preview were stunning. David and I looked radiant, deeply in love, and completely natural together. Victoria's cream dress had been expertly minimized in the shots, appearing as just another bridesmaid in the background of our love story. But as our first dance ended and the evening festivities began, I noticed Victoria positioning herself strategically throughout the reception. During cocktail hour, she had stationed herself near the bar, where guests naturally congregated, ensuring maximum visibility for her controversial dress choice. During dinner, she made frequent trips to the restroom, creating opportunities to walk through the center of the ballroom where everyone could see her. The breaking point came during the speeches. My father spoke first, delivering a heartfelt toast about watching me grow from a determined little girl into a confident woman who had found her perfect match in David. David's father followed with warm words about welcoming me into their family. Both speeches were met with enthusiastic applause and not a few happy tears. Then it was Victoria's turn, as maid of honor. She rose gracefully from the head table, her cream dress catching the chandelier light as she moved to the microphone. The room quieted in anticipation, and I felt my stomach tighten with dread. "Good evening, everyone," Victoria began, her voice carrying that familiar musical quality that had always commanded attention. "I'm Victoria, Irene's sister and maid of honor, and I have so many wonderful things to share about my beautiful little sister." The opening was perfectly appropriate, and I allowed myself a moment of hope that Victoria would simply deliver a normal, supportive speech. "Irene and I have been through everything together," Victoria continued, her smile radiant. "I've watched her navigate relationships, career challenges, and personal growth. And I have to say, seeing her today, she has never looked more adequate." The word adequate hung in the air like a poison dart. Victoria had delivered it with such perfect timing and inflection that it sounded almost like a compliment, but the insult was unmistakable to anyone paying attention. "I remember when we were little girls playing dress-up in our mother's closet. Irene always preferred the simple, understated pieces, while I was drawn to the more dramatic, show-stopping gowns. Some things never change." She paused to gesture towards her own cream-colored dress, and several guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats. My mother's face had gone rigid with controlled anger. "But what I love most about Irene is her willingness to let others shine. She's never been the type to demand the spotlight or compete for attention. She's content to let more vibrant personalities take center stage. And that's such a generous quality in a person."
Each sentence was a masterclass in passive-aggressive manipulation. Victoria was systematically undermining me while maintaining the pretense of offering compliments, using my wedding reception as her stage for a final, devastating performance. I know that some people might look at today's events and think that certain choices were inappropriate, Victoria continued, her voice taking on a tone of false vulnerability. But I want everyone to know that everything I've done has been out of love for my sister. Sometimes love means making difficult decisions, even when others might not understand them. She was actually trying to justify wearing white to my wedding as an act of sisterly devotion. That's when something extraordinary happened. Instead of feeling devastated or humiliated, I felt a surge of crystal clear understanding. Victoria wasn't just trying to upstage me, she was revealing herself completely to everyone in the room. Every guest could see exactly who she was and what she was doing. Her desperation was palpable, her manipulation transparent, and her need for attention so obvious that it had become pathetic rather than threatening. I rose from my seat at the head table. The movement was so unexpected that Victoria stopped mid-sentence, her perfectly rehearsed speech derailing as she realized I was standing. The entire ballroom turned to look at me, and I felt the weight of 200 pairs of eyes.
"Thank you, Victoria," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the silent room. "That was exactly what I expected from you." I moved to the microphone, and Victoria had no choice but to step aside, her face flushed with surprise and growing anger. "I'd like to say a few words as well," I continued, facing our guests with complete composure. "Today has been the most beautiful day of my life, not because everything went according to plan, but because it taught me something invaluable about love, family, and self-respect." David was watching me with admiration and pride, and I drew strength from his unwavering support. "I learned that when you know who you are and what you're worth, other people's attempts to diminish you only make you shine brighter. I learned that true beauty comes from confidence, kindness, and authenticity, not from manipulation or desperation for attention." Several guests began to nod in agreement, and I could see understanding dawning on faces throughout the room. Most importantly, I learned that surrounding yourself with people who genuinely love and support you is the greatest gift you can give yourself. David, thank you for loving me exactly as I am. Mom and Dad, thank you for raising me to have the strength to stand up for myself. And to our friends and family who are here celebrating with us, thank you for choosing to focus on love instead of drama. The applause that followed was warm and genuine, and I could see that our guests appreciated my grace in handling Victoria's behavior. "Victoria," I said, turning to address her directly, "I hope that someday you find the kind of love and happiness that doesn't require taking anything away from other people. Until then, I think it's best if you step back from the festivities this evening." The dismissal was polite, but unmistakable. Victoria's face went through a series of expressions: shock, anger, humiliation, and finally a kind of deflated defeat. She had played her final card and lost spectacularly. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," Victoria said, but her voice lacked its usual confidence. "No misunderstanding, just clarity." Victoria looked around the room, perhaps hoping for support from someone, but she found only disapproving faces and uncomfortable silence. Even Marcus, her boyfriend, was shaking his head with embarrassment. Without another word, Victoria gathered her small purse and left the ballroom, her cream-colored dress trailing behind her like a symbol of her failed sabotage attempt. As the doors closed behind her, the entire atmosphere of the reception transformed.
The tension that had been building for weeks evaporated, replaced by genuine celebration and joy. Our guests rallied around David and me with renewed enthusiasm, as if they were celebrating not just our marriage, but my triumph over manipulation and self-doubt. The rest of the evening was magical. We danced to our favorite songs, shared cake that actually tasted as good as it looked, and basked in the love of people who genuinely wanted to celebrate our happiness. Jake Morrison captured every moment beautifully, and the photos he showed us throughout the night revealed a couple who looked completely natural, joyful, and secure in their love. During our last dance of the evening, David pulled me close and whispered, "I have never been more proud to be your husband than I was when you stood up to Victoria tonight." "I've never felt more like myself than I do right now," I whispered back. As we left the reception at midnight, surrounded by sparklers and well wishes from our guests, I reflected on the incredible transformation I'd undergone. 3 months ago, I had been a people-pleasing bride-to-be who was terrified of disappointing anyone. Tonight, I was a confident woman who had protected her own happiness without apology. Victoria's attempts to destroy my wedding had ultimately given me the greatest gift of all, the knowledge that I was strong enough to stand up for myself and secure enough in my own worth to let other people's insecurities roll off me like water. 6 months later, David and I received our wedding album from Jake Morrison. The photos were absolutely stunning. Every image captured the genuine love and joy of our celebration. Victoria appeared in some of the group shots, but rather than dominating them as she had intended, she looked out of place and inappropriate, while David and I glowed with happiness and authenticity. We never heard from Victoria again. She moved to Los Angeles shortly after the wedding, pursuing some new dream that would inevitably disappoint her when it failed to fill the emptiness that drove her constant need for attention. But that's her story to figure out. Mine is the story of a woman who learned to claim her own happiness, protect her own joy, and build a marriage based on genuine love and mutual respect. And we lived happily ever after, not because everything was perfect, but because we had learned to make our own happiness the priority it deserved to be.
Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.